Good morning, Leader.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to February's meeting of the County Council Executive. My name is Councillor Martin Hill, Leader of the Council and Chairman of this particular committee. So we've got quite a long and important agenda this morning. So without further ado, I'll move straight on to apologies for absence, please. And then we'll do the roll call.
Thank you, Leader. I haven't received any apologies.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to the roll call of members who are present, and also record of officers present as well. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. Can the members confirm they are present when I call their name? Councillor Mrs. Patricia Bradwell.
Present.
Councillor Colin Davey.
Present.
Councillor Richard Davies.
Present.
Councillor Eddie Poll.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Sue Woolley.
Present.
Councillor Nick Worth.
Present.
Councillor Barry Young. Councillor Young.
Present.
Thank you. We also have Councillor Hugo Marfleet, Chairman of Adults and Community Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Ron Oxby, Vice Chairman of Environment and Economy Scrutiny Committee, and Councillor Rob Parker, Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. We also have the following officers in attendance: Debbie Barnes, Chief Executive; Andrew Crookham, Executive Director Resources; James Drury, Executive Director Commercial; Glenn Garrett, Executive Director of Adult Care and Community Wellbeing; Andy Gutherson, Executive Director of Place; Heather Sandy, Executive Director Children's Services; and Nigel West, Head of Democratic Services.
Thank you very much for that, Rachel. Anybody excluded or want to add anything to that? Nope. Okay. I shall then carry on then. So the usual rules apply to the meeting. If you're not speaking, please at least turn off your microphone. And if we get interference, you'll probably have to turn off your video as well. That's entirely up to you. And obviously, if you want to speak, just say so in the chat function, and we'll do the voting as usual, where when we come to the vote, most votes, we will actually clear the screens, and then people can put their hands up, indicating the executive members that they wish to vote. So we've got quite a busy agenda, and a very important agenda this morning. So without further ado, I'll crack on. So next item 2 then is, has any councillor got a declaration of interest they wish to declare, please? In the absence of none forthcoming, I'll take it then that there are no declarations of interest. Thank you for that. Move on to item 3 then, which is announcements by myself or any member of the executive. Again, I don't think there are any. On coronavirus, obviously we continue having pretty low rates, steady rates in Lincolnshire, which are about, have gone down slightly, but are still about half the national average. And we seem to be in a steady state here. The good news is that obviously we've now got the full rollout, or the semi-full rollout of vaccinations, with the second big centre on the Lincoln Showground now opened this morning. So that does mean once they get up to speed, they will be we'll be able to get through the share of vaccinations, and we are just about on target for delivering the first phase, the first 4 tiers of vulnerable people by the 15th of February. I think in Lincolnshire that's quite an achievement, because we do have above average number of over 80s in our county. So it's going pretty well in Lincolnshire, and let's hope that continues. We continue to work well with the NHS and support them, and we also working well with them, cooperating with them, so that we can get our frontline staff and care home staff vaccinated as well. So in these very difficult times, it is going as well as can be expected, and we can just hope that the rates do start to decline now, so we can start talking about a bit more normality. I have Councillor Bradwell as well, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to also just confirm that all our residential homes in the county have been vaccinated. That's staff as well, which is a great achievement, seeing as we've got over 300 in the county. So I think, again, that will really give confidence to carers and family across the county that actually their loved ones have now been vaccinated, so should be, sort of protected from COVID. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. If you'd like to remove your hand, that would be great, or virtually remove your hand. Okay then, unless there are any other announcements, I'll then move on to the next item, which is item 4, which are to agree or not the minutes of the meeting held of this committee on the 5th of January. So they have been circulated, so I propose that they are accepted as a true and accurate record. Is there any dissent from that proposal? If so, please now show.
None indicated, Leader.
Thank you. So I'll then take it that I can sign those as a record. Thank you for that. Okay, then we then move on to item 5, which is the major item today, which is the council proposals for the council budget for the years financial year 21-22. As executive members are well aware, a very similar paper came to this committee a month ago, and obviously then went out to consultation from various parties. So we've now had the consultation, and we had more information coming back in terms from government, but also from tax collection authorities as well. So I'll hand over firstly to Andrew Crookham, our Executive Director for Finance, who will just introduce the paper before we're taken through it in more detail. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, as you say, today's paper presents the picture following the consultation period during January. As Michelle will outline in her detailed run through in a minute, we're still not at a fully final position. As you're aware, the provisional finance settlement does tend to be issued during February, and the latest indication is that will be voted on in the House of Commons on the 11th of February. So there's still a subject to in terms of the final figures, but Michelle will cover those in her presentation, and I'll return back to the mic for any further questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the purpose of the report for executive is for executive to consider any changes that are required to be made to the budget that were proposed on the 5th of January, and to consider any consultation feedback that's been provided during the consultation period, and to consider the equality impact analysis on the increase of council tax, and then make final recommendations for council on the 19th of February. In terms of the financial update, at the point that the report was published, we were still waiting for confirmation from the district councils around what we needed to budget for in funding in terms of council tax and business rates income. We were still getting that information back yesterday. So an update to the budget proposal was circulated to executive members just prior to the meeting, but I'll kind of run through some of the key points there. The briefing sets out some of the technical challenges we have in bringing that information together, mainly in relation to the grants that we expect to receive to compensate us for the rate reliefs that government's put in place during this year to support business, and the current treatment of any deficits incurred by the district councils in terms of their collection funds for council tax and business rates. So our forecasting has been quite prudent when we've worked with the districts for a period of time to try and understand the ongoing picture, which hopefully reflects the fairly minimal change to our funding forecast, which is that we've got an increase in funding of just over £500,000, bringing our surplus position for a movement to reserves of 2.464 million, as opposed to the 1.9 million that's in the published report. As Andrew said, that's still subject to announcement on our final settlement, which is due in Parliament next week, but hopefully we'll get some papers prior to that will confirm our final settlement details. The report itself has no proposed changes to the revenue or capital service budgets from as they were presented on the 5th of January, which is shown in your report on tables A and B on pages 16 and 17 of the report. The proposed 1.99% council tax increase is demonstrated at page 18, with the increase in a bandy equivalent amounting to £26.58 per year, which is about 51 pence per week. We've also included in the report from page 19 some of the key financial risks relating to COVID-19, which in the short term we've assumed will be met by government grants, but clearly any longer term impacts will need to be built into our medium term financial strategy as they are better understood. In terms of consultation, an updated Appendix G has been circulated to members, which includes all of the feedback we received from scrutiny committees, with the consultation meeting with business and other invited parties, and from members of the public via the website and email. Overall, the feedback was supportive of the proposals being made and recognised the need for the council tax increase proposed to support cost pressures that we needed to build into our budgets. And the scrutiny committees clearly had some interesting discussion about the issues impacting on service-specific budgets. There isn't anything else that I'm planning to highlight in terms of the report, so at that point I'll hand back to Executive for any comments or questions.
Thank you very much for that, Michelle. Could I ask Rob Parker, Chairman of Overview Scrutiny, just to summarise for us the comments coming back from Scrutiny. Thank you, Rob.
Sure, certainly. The executive received a paper which set out in a bit more detail some of the items that we've discussed at our Overview and Scrutiny Management Board. I just want to pick out 4 of them to highlight. Firstly, that the OSMB accepted that cost pressures for the coming year could be met by an increase in the council tax of 1.9% and by achieving significant savings in revenue expenditure. It was also noted that the capital programme needed to fund extra funding for increased costs in future years. In particular, the Lincoln Eastern bypass came in at £9 million over budget. Capital, the Grantham Southern Relief Road is likely to be £10 million. And this had been achieved by taking funds from uncommitted future schemes. We noted that. We also noted, as might be expected, that COVID-19 would have a huge impact on our funding going forward, particularly in relation to adult social care, and that we noted that we would be looking forward to receiving details about how that was going to be dealt with. And finally, homeschool transport costs are an increasing issue and have been for some time. We recognised that it was good to see that under examination, it was under examination as part of the transformation programme, and also an outside consultant had been brought in. So they were the 4 things that we noted from the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there anybody else from Scrutiny World who wishes to make any comments in addition? If so, now indicate. Okay then, well, thank you very much for that. So yes, thank you for that. So obviously we've had the feedback, and the budget has certainly been a challenging year for all of us, for the public, for businesses, and indeed for the council. So I think it is commendable that we are actually able to come to this budget season, these budget proposals in a reasonably good position. I think also that there has been obviously additional pressures on the council dealing with coronavirus, both with the extra costs and with the lost income in things like visitor attractions and other income we would normally get. I think at this stage we should acknowledge that the government has been generous with its support for us. So I think it's over £44 million the government has given to this particular council, and as well as giving money to other councils, which has enabled us to carry on delivering those services, but more importantly, making sure we're able to step up and do that. So we are in the process of working through our way of spending that money, and we have to report to government how it's being spent, and that is going according to plan. So I think that's we should acknowledge that, and we should also acknowledge that the difficulty that many people are suffering who are on furlough, who have lost their jobs, and all the rest of it, which is why we are to, as we had the debate a month ago, that we are proposing to put the council tax up by just 2% instead of the 5%, which we would be allowed for adult care expenses. And we'll obviously review that situation this time next year. We also need to note this is again a one-year budget. Originally, the plan was for the government to have certainly probably a multi-year settlement, so we would know probably for the rest of this Parliament what our position was, so we could plan accordingly. But obviously, with the stresses of coronavirus, the government is this year only able to give a one-year settlement, which is essentially a carry forward, which means we are in the same boat. So those issues such as the funding of adult care, which has to be decided nationally, and the fairer funding and the business rate, the way businesses are taxed and then the money comes back to us, all those things are still subject to some considerable uncertainty. So although we have a pretty solid situation at the moment, we do really need, unfortunately, to wait yet another year before we could be confident what the situation is going forward, as well as keeping our council tax low. And I think we will be nearly the lowest county council precepting authority in the country soon, which is something I think we can afford to do this year to keep council tax down. We're also, of course, continuing to provide all those services we need to supply to keep people safe and able to deliver the things we need to deliver. And obviously, as we're aware, a lot of our services are either excellent, good, or in pretty good shape. We're also, of course, part of these proposals is a 200 million gross capital building programme, which just over half of which will come from council resources. So I think we are in a pretty strong place compared to many councils. So I can reassure anybody who's listening in from the public or the press that we are not one of those councils who are in desperate straits. We have taken some savings again this year, which I can assure people do not affect frontline services. They are efficiency savings, but again, that is one of the ways we can make sure that we can keep council tax low, but also make sure we can do that. So I think we're doing pretty well. And we've also we continue with, which is always a subject of debate, we have our financial volatility reserve still available. And of course, what we'd like to have done this year is once we knew what the medium-term situation was, we could take a view. And we have taken a cautious approach to that to date. And that's always a subject of debate, whether that's right or not. But and I think the advice still is, in terms of the bulk of the financial volatility reserve, is probably continue with that cautious approach. But I do think we also need to review what pressures there are in the light of the current situation we're in. So I'll now pass over to members of the executive to actually comment on that, on anything they see and any thoughts they have. So could I have some speakers, please? Okay, I have Councillor Colin Davey, please, Executive Member for Economic Development. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. And as you have rightly said, we have been over many years prudent in terms of financial management, and we have reserves which are available to us in times of emergency and crisis. I want to thank you and my colleagues for the discussions we've had in recent weeks. And I'm going to propose now an addition to the council budget for the forthcoming year, which is a package of measures to support the economy, not just to survive COVID, but to recover and grow in the years ahead. So the package I'm going to propose is a total of £12 million. It's a business support budget, and I'm going to break that into 5 sections. I would expect that any support package will create big demand. So I'm going to propose that we will stagger the opening of those schemes, and the application process for them will be open for 3 days at a time to help us to manage demand. So I've broken that £12 million amendment to the budget down as follows. A £7 million grants package for businesses who have not received any government funding whatsoever. So these would be businesses such as directors that pay themselves a dividend, businesses that were in self-employment on the 11th of March 2020, and businesses not on the business rates rating list. We would put information about criteria and how to apply on the council's website within 24 hours of the scrutiny committee, the Environment and Economy Scrutiny Committee, discussing this item on the 16th of February. I would then propose, once the council has taken its decision, to open that process on the 22nd of February for 3 days, where applications will be processed on a first-come, first-served basis. We'd expect first payments from that scheme to be made within 2 weeks. The grants will be for a sum up to £10,000 per business. The second part of that package would be £1 million for digital vouchers, which would help businesses to get onto digital platforms, be better at e-commerce, and reducing their costs and overheads through digital means. There would be vouchers of £1,000 each, and we would encourage businesses who are successful in their application to spend those vouchers, of course, with Lincolnshire businesses where possible. We would open that programme on the 8th of March, and the priority would be for businesses who employ less than 50. To give you an example, schemes might include e-commerce platforms, contactless payment systems, companies that want to get a website that haven't got one, software development, IT hardware and software to support remote working and digitisation of processes. The next part of this would be £1.5 million to support village businesses and for local initiatives. We would open that programme on the 8th of March and would offer grants of between £3,000 to £25,000 as a 75% contribution to deliver diversification opportunities resulting in new products or services, adapting to COVID-19 and Brexit challenges and needs, becoming sustainable by updating physical infrastructure or developing sustainable rural tourism offers. And separately, and in direct response to the Tourism Commission I chair, we will build on the investment that the County Council has already been making using its COVID grant to revamp the Visit Lincolnshire website. I have to tell you, it's looking fabulous. And we would also invest in promoting the visitor economy, especially through getting better coverage in media and across digital platforms. And finally, a £2.5 million investment grants fund for businesses who have the potential to grow rapidly. We would want to ring-fence some of this amount to help the young businesses with the great ideas, because they are the county's future. Grants will be between £25,000 and £75,000. The projects will have to support value-added activity that will create new commercial opportunities and additional sustainable employment in Lincolnshire. We would open expressions of interest for those between the 15th of March and the 17th of March of this year. So that makes up, Leader, the £12 million package I'm proposing to support the economy going forward. We have 43,000 small businesses in Lincolnshire. They are the backbone of our economy. They are the best of our county, and they represent the opportunity of the future. So I'd commend this package to the executive and look for your support. And finally, I would also like to add in the other part of my portfolio, the issues of flooding. As we're all aware, we have had further incidents of flooding over the last few months. So I would also propose moving from reserves a £200,000 package, which would sit with Councillor Davies' budget in highways to act as our emergency flood response mechanism. So that would be my proposal and amendment to the budget today, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to confirm, you are proposing that money would come out the financial volatility reserve, which currently stands at around £50 million, I believe. I can't remember the exact figure. So, and just to confirm also, these are recommendations to the full council, and there will be a scrutiny committee of the relevant scrutiny committee will meet to look at these proposals in more detail to satisfy themselves that they make sense. I think they very much. Yes, sorry, Councillor David, carry on.
That is correct, Leader. I am proposing that we use Lincolnshire money from Lincolnshire's reserves to support the Lincolnshire economy going forward, and these measures would come out of reserve. And I would also add, of course, that the scrutiny committee would of course wish to scrutinise these proposals properly before it comes to the full council for a decision.
Thank you very much for that. So yes, I think I would certainly support your proposal. That, as I said in my introduction, it has been very stressful for us, but exceptionally stressful for small businesses in particular. And although the government has been very generous, has given huge sums of money out to support businesses through furlough and other direct grant schemes, there are unfortunately still some businesses which have fallen through the cracks, so to speak. And I do think we need to support them. But it's not just about supporting those businesses to make sure they do survive where appropriate, but also that they are then in a good place to actually expand and invest. And I think everybody agrees that once the key moment for most of us will be when we come out of this awful situation we're in at the present. We want businesses to survive and actually then invest, and that will give the prosperity and the employment of the future. Very much focused, as you said, on small businesses and those businesses which have so far sort of not had support of any sufficient degree. So it will be, I think it's something we should do at this time, especially in Lincolnshire, and it is how we can support those businesses and support the future prosperity of our county. And I think we all know of small business people in particular, are getting increasingly desperate in terms of the stress they're under. And of course, unfortunately, with the variant of the coronavirus, that there's been so many false dawns now that I think businesses that felt they could just about get to Christmas and beyond and hopefully be in a better state now are having to wait even longer. So I think it's the right thing we are doing today to use those reserves positively and give that money out. And I think it's the right thing to do, and I fully support your proposal. The next speaker I've got is Councillor Bradwell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just my buttons are a bit slow when I want to come on. Yes, just want to say a little bit about the areas I cover. Obviously, adult care and children's social care have been under immense pressure with the pandemic. Obviously, very vulnerable adults and very vulnerable children, with not being able to get out or actually live their normal lives, going to school and that, especially with the young people in care, really did struggle. And we did have more children come into care, around 60, which we have had to place out of county in specialist homes. So, there has been a lot of fallout with the children and obviously older people who we look after because of the way that the pandemic has affected us. I think on the good news side, we are building special schools. We've got a big programme of special schools, and we will be investing more in those buildings because of conditions that we've found as we've gone forward with that plan. And then Councillor Parker did mention the school transport budget, which has got a lot of volatility at the moment, and obviously we're running loads more transport because of children having to socialise on the buses going to school. So, and as he said, we are doing a full review. Hope that won't take that much longer, and obviously that will be presented to scrutiny. We have got consultants in, and we are working very, very closely with the consultant. I and Richard Davis meet regularly with officers to get feedback about how that's going. So there is a lot happening, and we are trying to actually, stem those the budget going out of control. But because of the COVID pandemic, we have seen some of our services change and cost a lot more. Because actually, I would say, as we've heard, our council, does very well. Our pound goes a long way. If you look at the CIFA figures and that and indicators, it does show that Lincolnshire does offer good value for money in the services that we deliver. But actually, because of what we've been through since last year, we have seen our budgets, go out of control probably a little because of all the extra care we've had to give. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the proposal that Councillor Davies just announced is absolutely great news for our small businesses in the county as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. The next speaker I've got is Councillor Richard Davis, Portfolio for Highways and IT. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Just to echo some of the comments actually from colleagues, I think, nobody suspected COVID was around the corner. And the reality is the years of financial prudence that Lincolnshire County Council has put us in means that we are in a position to make some big decisions when big problems face us. And I, in particular, do welcome Councillor Davies' proposals, in particular around the forgotten, as they're often called in the business community. There are a lot of small businesses here in Lincolnshire which have missed out on some of the government's funding, while welcome where it's been applicable. And I think it sends a really powerful message out that Lincolnshire County Council, with its financial reserves that it's been prudent enough to save, is in a position when times are very tough to candidly get the chequebook out. And I know it'll be very welcomed by a lot of good businesses that, through no fault of their own, are struggling. And in fairness, there have been gaps in government support. I'd also welcome the flooding support that Councillor Davies is proposing to come into highways. I think it's a new developing problem in a way that hasn't been picked up in the past. We are seeing increasing amounts of highway flooding, and it's starting to affect people's property. And I think where other authorities aren't necessarily stepping up to the mark in the way they should, we as Lead Flood Authority can use some of our might, as it were, to start doing something about it, more so than we have done in the past. It will not be without its risks. More fundamentally within my area, I have a proposal as well I'd like to put to you, to colleagues, to use some of our financial volatility reserve to invest in a rural road refurbishment programme, which will fundamentally be around the unclassifieds and the C roads, so that's our smaller rural network, about improving the quality and the maintenance regime on some of those roads. It's will come as no surprise to anybody who's driven across Lincolnshire in recent weeks that the particular bad weather and the catalogue of cold, wet, snow in particular has, in some of our rural networks, left them in a very poor state. While we as a county have one of the largest road networks in the country, I'm sad to say that national government, regardless of party funding, hasn't always been where it should be. And I think we have an opportunity using some of our reserves, and I would propose we take £10 million out of our volatility reserve to spend on that core network. Most people in Lincolnshire begin and end their journey on a U or a C. They are the lifeline for a lot of our communities. And while we've done some excellent work in recent years on our core network, on the old trunk road network, the A's and B's, I'm afraid it's fair to say that some of our smaller rural roads, while incredibly important for connecting our more isolated rural communities, are in need of some support. And I think now is a great opportunity. We've got a new contractor on board in terms of Balfour Beatty. We have a new regime in terms of potholing. We've rolled out Find and Fix, for example. It's going very well. Colleagues hopefully will have seen some of the benefits of the community maintenance gangs in your area starting to pick up not only straight road repairs, but also things like footpath repairs, signage replacement, barriers, and again, flooding and draining issues. We have a vast asset there. I think it's estimated to be worth close to 10 billion in terms of the value of our road and highway network. And I think it's right that we take this opportunity to invest an additional £10 million in it. I appreciate it's a huge amount of money, not to be overstated what a big decision this would be, but I think it puts a real marker in the ground that we as an authority take road maintenance extremely seriously. We've been at the forefront for many years of how we maintain the road network, and I think now we're in an excellent position to invest a significant amount of money to help improve it even further. So I would ask for colleague support in that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, Councillor Davis. Yes, I think I certainly support your desire to actually invest specifically money in this 10 million in the smaller minor roads and the very rural roads, because rightly, I think in the past we've made sure that the main roads are kept in as good a position as possible. But I do think we need additional investment. I think our record since in the last 10 years has been pretty good, bearing in mind councils, including ourselves, have had to make significant savings, and we have always protected the highways budget. And indeed, there has been additional government support for pothole repairs in the past, which we've used for potholes. But as you rightly say, Councillor Davis, we have a massive road network, and even though we're spending £50 million a year on highways improvements and highways in general, clearly that's not enough, but there is a limit to what we can do with all the other challenges we've got. So I think an extra £10 million on those minor roads will be really welcome, and I think it will be just help people get through it. And as you've said, with the more hard weather we've had of the last few weeks, it is beginning to show. So I certainly support that, as indeed I support what you and Councillor Davey have said about the flooding issues. We all know, and it's obviously a topical thing at the moment, that we've continued to have lots of flooding. And it's fair to say, although we are the lead flood authority, it is quite confusing as to who actually does what in terms of whether it's Environment Agency, a district council, or indeed a drainage board. So I think we've got to, take the lead on this, so that particularly when communities are having an incident, that we actually are able to support them straight away, because there has been some confusion in the past. And again, I think this is a good use of money, which hopefully will go into, if it's not used in 1 year, will sit there a bit like the winter reserve we have for salt and grit and all the rest of it. So again, I think it's a good thing to be doing at this time. I now have Councillor Woolley, please, who is Executive Member for Health and Community Engagement.
Thank you very much indeed, Leader. I echo the comments that you've just made around the highways funding and the proposal from Councillor Davis. As someone who has a number of very minor roads in my division, it's certainly welcome news knowing that they are going to be looked at and tended for and cared for. You're absolutely right that we, as Councillor Davis has said, we start and end our journeys predominantly on those small minor roads. I particularly want to applaud the initiative, the business initiative that Councillor Davey has just spoken about. For me, I've noticed again in my own area that the offer of the digital vouchers will mean an awful lot to those one-man bands and those small businesses where, for example, card readers, I've heard it said on more than one occasion that they're a great idea, but that on cost, that monthly cost or that initial outlay is just that little bit too much. And if we are able, and particularly with our residents as well, whether we like it or not, cash is not going to be quite so easy to get hold of. If this means that we are able to support those businesses, but also our residents at the same time, one will help the other. So this, for me, is extremely welcome news. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. I now move to Councillor Nick Worth, Executive Member for the Fire Service and Culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Grain, a bit like Councillor Woolley, I live in a very remote area, so absolutely delighted with the initiative on sea roads, certainly in this area, and the recent kind of sheer amounts of rain we've had. It is sometimes difficult to see the road for the water sometimes, so inevitably those sea roads are going to be under a massive amount of pressure. So I really welcome that, as I do the support for businesses as well. Certainly in my area there are businesses that have fallen through the net, and I do get regularly badgered by them as to how we can help them. So this is very welcome for that. I think finally also just to say, as you'd be aware, Leader, that we've recently had an inspection by Her Majesty's Inspector of Fire and Rescue Services to look at how the Fire and Rescue Service responded to the COVID pandemic up to date. And I think particularly important to this item on the agenda is their focus on finances, how robust the finances were, which is a real credit to the County Council's finance team, and particularly mention things like where we've made savings on fuel and travelling. We've actually been able to use those savings to cover the additional costs that we've had to incur. And I think also worth mentioning that not only that, but because we've got those robust finances as a county fire and rescue service, it has allowed us to do things and respond to community incidents, which maybe standalone fire and rescue authorities have not been able to do. So thank you, sir, to that finance department for all their input into the fire and rescue service, because it has made a big difference and has allowed us to respond and help our local communities. Thank you, Chairman.
My microphone is muted. Is there anybody else who wishes to contribute, please? In which case, I'll just summarise before Councillor Davies wants to come back. Thank you. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'd like to welcome Councillor Richard Davies's comments in relation to the Rural Roads Initiative. I think it's absolutely essential. We're all aware of some of the challenges we have with our rural communities and our rural roads. So I strongly welcome that initiative, and I think it sends a strong message to the people of Lincolnshire that we are not only thinking about their issues, but planning for the future, and making some investments today actually in the long term does save us some money.
Thank you very much for that. Right, unless anybody else wishes to speak, I will just summarise what the proposals are, then I'll hand over to Andrew Crookham, our Director of Finance, to just check with him that he is content with these proposals, that they don't break any rules or anything. So just to summarise then, so we are proposing that there's a transfer of £12 million from the Financial Policies Reserve for a new reserve, which we call the Support for Business Reserve. So this money can then be handed out. And the idea is we get on and hand it out very quickly, because I don't think businesses can wait while we sort of go through a massive bureaucratic process. But at the same time, we need to be sure ourselves that we are handing to appropriate people. So there will need to be some checks, but the checks will be as minimal as is prudently possible. In addition, another 200,000 from the Financial Policies Reserve for the Flood and Water Risk Management Reserve. So again, that will be sitting there so that the Development Directorate can then spring into action with some assets. And again, the details of that will go to a scrutiny committee, so everybody's content with what's being, or most people are content with what's going on. So obviously we'll have to reflect the recommendations, and the 10 million for the rural roads will come from the capital contingency, which is at the moment over, has not been used up this year, and that will go to a specific rural road fund. So I'll now hand over to Andrew Crookham just to give his advice as to whether he is content with the process of those proposals. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Leader. So yeah, the main headline response to that question is yes, we are. So the immediate need for the funds that you've outlined gives rise to a transfer between reserves in year is allowable, but does require a full council decision. So the proposal is that the amendments to these reserves will be part of the budget package paper that will go to council on the 19th of February. And subject to that council vote, those funds would be earmarked for those new purposes immediately. As Councillor Davey highlighted during his speech, for the supports for businesses item, that key decision report, as you say, will be going to scrutiny on the 16th of February for that pre-decision scrutiny before a decision is taken prior to the 23rd of February, and subject to the successful release of those funds as part of the council decision, but would be available immediately to spend after that decision's made. Ditto with the flood funding. Again, it's an immediate transfer, but clearly the decision process for that is at a low level due to the value of the funds that you're proposing to transfer. But again, an immediate transfer, so that's available for any issues that may occur related to flooding before the end of the 2021 financial year. I think, as you referred to, Leader, in your speech, both items are being transferred from the volatility reserve. The established principle for that reserve is one to manage future funding uncertainty, which you and Michelle both referred to as still being still to be resolved, and the proposals that you've outlined would reduce that balance on that reserve down to £40 million, subject to the changes that Michelle indicated may still happen between now and the final settlement. It won't surprise you to hear from me that, as you said, I think you referred to the Leader around my professional advice being to keep that at a suitable level, and my Section 25 statement to Council as part of the budget proposals will reference these items clearly, given the size of the investment, and that advice will also say to replenish those reserves up to that level at the earliest opportunity where they may arise. As you've indicated, the Rural Road Fund item is a straightforward transfer between capital headings and has no impact on the revenue budget, and therefore perfectly acceptable use of those funds. So I'll hand back to you there. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. It's reassuring, A, that you approve, and B, you are still being very cautious in terms of your financial advice. So what I propose to do now, and this is a double act, so I think Nigel's hoping to put on the screen the amendments. I will also read those out so we're all clear. Unfortunately, this is we're not meeting physically. We'll have to do it this way. So I'll read out the proposals, and I think Nigel's going to try and put up on the screen as well to help us. So I'll just read out the changes. So after paragraph 2 of the recommendation, insert a new paragraph 2A as follows. 2A. Approve the recommendation to full council that the budget for 2021 be amended as follows. 1. New support for business reserve of £12 million be created for the purpose of implementing schemes for supporting Lincolnshire businesses by a transfer of £12 million from the financial volatility reserve, and £200,000, this is item 2, £200,000 be transferred from the financial volatility reserve to the existing flood and water risk management reserve for the purpose of providing sandbags across the county. Then amend, and again, a narrative here, amend paragraph 3A of the recommendation to read as follows. The revenue budget for 21-22 proposed in table B of the report, subject to the following changes. 1. The financial volatility reserve be reduced by £12.2 million. 2. The new support for business reserve of £12 million be inserted. And 3. The flood and water risk management reserve be increased by £200,000 to £418,000 or £4.18 million. Finally, amend paragraph 3B of the recommendation to read as follows. B. The capital programme for 21-22 proposed in Table C and Appendix C of the report, subject to the new Developments Capital Contingency Fund being reduced by £10 million and the insertion of a new scheme in highways titled Rural Road Fund with an allocation of £10 million. The rest of the recommendations will stay the same as set out in the report. Okay, those are the proposed amendments. So is everybody understand that and comfortable before we go to the vote? I'll pause for a moment.
Happy, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. So if you can take that, remove that, please, someone. Okay, with that then I'll now move to the vote on the amended recommendation. So could I ask that all those who are not voting participant, please just take away their screens, please. Put them on, get rid of them so we're just left with the executive. Okay, so there are proposals there. So I now propose as amended. All those in favour now please show on the screen. Okay, Councillor Poll, is that, I think we're missing Councillor Poll and Councillor Young. They agreed, are they?
I'm here, yeah.
So Nigel, are we all clear? Has everybody voted? Nigel?
Yes, Leader, that's unanimous of those present.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that, ladies, councillors. Good, I think that's good news for the county area. Thank you very much for that. So that is agreed then as amended. Thank you. And that will obviously, as I previously said, go forward on to the full council later this month for approval or not. Okay then, thank you for that. I'll move on to item 6, which is an extra care housing scheme in Sleaford. So I'll go straight to Councillor Bradwell. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, this follows on from last month when we brought the Netlham Limeland site to you. This is another extra care housing, and we're now moving to Sleaford, which is in North Kesteven. We are hoping over the next year or so to actually provide this type of accommodation across the county, working with our district colleagues or with housing associations. So this one is on the Hopland site in Sleaford. It is the old site which used to be is part of the county council's highways land and district council, and we're proposing working with North Kesteven District Council on providing 40 extra care apartments there, and this time putting 12 supported living properties on there for working age adults, and that's people with learning disabilities, physical disabilities, who really struggle to get the right accommodation for their needs. So it is an exciting project. We are going to be investing 2.56 million into capital into this project. That's out of the fund that we've set aside for all these works. As I say, I think North Kesteven are really happy about, working with us and being able to develop this type of accommodation in Sleaford. This site is a brilliant site. It is just slightly, it's not dead in the town centre, but it is in the town. So people living there will be able to access the shops or community activities in the area. So, I'm really excited about this. As I say, we're hoping after the May election that a couple more will come on stream in Horncastle and in South Kesteven in Market Deeping. And, this is going to make a huge difference. It is fit for purpose properties which will be insulated and warm, and obviously the older people will be living together, and they will be, make friendship groups and have that interaction with other people. We know that older people who live on their own probably only see a home care worker 2 or 3 times a day. That doesn't help with their stimulation and their conversation. So people who get to a certain age and live in this accommodation, we know that their lives are so much better because they've got company. So, Mr. Chairman, that's all I want to say. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure we've got officers here if I can't answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I mean, very, very supportive of this scheme, which is effectively using some redundant council land which we own, instead of just selling it, as you said, creating what's called this extra care housing, which means, as you've rightly said, that people can live semi-independently but still have that support available, which has got to be good news, not only for the residents but also for the council as well, in that residents have more independence, are able to look after themselves more. So I'm very supportive of this. I don't know whether Glenn Garrett, our director for this area, would like to comment. While we're waiting, I'll just ask Councillor Paul is indicating. Thank you, Leader. As well. Glenn, thank you.
It's okay, I'll wait.
Yeah, you don't mind waiting. Thank you, Eddie. Yes, Glenn.
Thank you, Leader. This scheme also introduces a new element for members and another offer for our local community. It will provide for working age adults with disabilities as much as it does people who are older and need that extra level of support. But I don't want to take away own contributions. Members will note this is a joint report by both the Executive Director for Commercial and myself, and I think Kevin Kendall and or Emma Rowett would like to take you through the paper a little bit more, if you will, Leader.
Thank you very much. Okay, who's first then? Did you want to wait, Councillor Paul, or would you want to come in now? In your hands.
No, I'm happy to wait, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
If I could just provide a bit more detail then of the development. So it is a 29-bed facility, 1-bed facility and 11 2-beds in the main development for extra care and the associated communal facilities, and there'll be 12 properties for working age adults. The process we're following here for the partnership with North Stephen is a nomination process, so with a funding agreement, and we have nomination rights on the units within the extra care scheme and within the working age adult scheme for a 30-year period, and importantly there is no void risk to the County Council. Construction work is planned to commence in the summer of 2022 for completion in spring of 2024. Importantly, as well as providing a choice for residents in the area, this also will have a payback for the County Council within 18 years because it's cheaper for the Council to place residents in this type of accommodation rather than in residential accommodation, which is much more expensive. So the benefits in conclusion really are that this will increase the provision for older people and working age adults within Lincolnshire. It will assist in offsetting medium and long-term revenue costs, but importantly facilitate Lincolnshire residents to live independently for as long as possible within their local communities. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that. Was somebody else coming in? I think, were they? Is that right? No? That's it. Councillor Paul,
I think Glenn,
your chance has finally come.
I think Glenn would have suggested that Emma Rowett would
yes, like I thought Emma was coming in. Is she coming?
No pressure, Emma, but you know.
Well, there you are, Emma. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. No, Kevin Kendall's covered everything that needs to be covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for that. Right, Councillor Paul, your time has arrived at last.
I can't remember what I was going to say now.
We're waiting with bated breath now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't remember what I was going to say. But it's basically just to take the recommendations and congratulate everybody involved in putting together this programme of investment into decent quality housing for people who need it going forward. As you heard last time, we've been waiting a while, and now we've got this deal going with North K. It's really good, and I'm exceptionally pleased to see that finally we're managing to make some in an area where we've been really short in the past. So congratulations to all round and happy to support.
Thank you, and I know that you've been involved with the planning of this as well, so thank you to you as well. Councillor Marfleet, please.
Morning, Chairman. I'd just like to say a few words really from the scrutiny meeting that we had on this
thank you.
Topic. The whole committee is very supportive of this, very impressed by the way that everybody's come together, worked in partnership and sort of driven what we think really is a benchmark going forward for the future of sort of extra care provision in Lincolnshire. We like the way that we accommodated the mixture of different requirements from those working age adults, bringing and supporting them as well as the elderly. And all in all, the whole committee was very, very appreciative and highly recommends this, and would love to see more happen in the future. So
thank you very much
all those involved.
Thank you. Councillor Woolley.
Thank you. Just very quickly, again, I echo the comments that have been made, and I think it's particularly good to hear that Councillor Bradwell was making comment around there will be more of these in different areas, because I think the one thing that residents really, really do want is when it comes to it, when they need that little bit more help, they want to remain in their own communities, and the thought that they will be able to still have a bit of independence but be in their local area, I think it's absolutely wonderful. So delighted, and let's hope there's more rolling out as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Harfleet could lower his hand, please. That would be good. Any further speakers, please? Okay, thank you for that. So I don't think you need to sum up, Councillor Bradwell, so we'll go to the vote then. So the recommendations are on page 10 of the papers, which there are 4 of them, which basically summarises not just the extra care housing, indeed how we're going to resolve all the issues on that site. So those are the recommendations. So if I could ask again that anybody who's a non-voter, excuse me, please turn their camera off, and then we can move to a vote. Okay, I've got some people here, so we still haven't got all. Just hold on a minute. All those now in favour of those 4 proposals, please now show. Nigel, how are we doing?
That's unanimous, Leader.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for that. Good news story there, and one of many to come in the future and in progress as well, hopefully. Okay, then, I'll then move on to the next item, which is item 7. Which is the County Council's Green Master Plan. So I'll hand straight over to Councillor Davey, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. And again, continuing the good news theme, this is a great news story for Lincolnshire. In 2011, this council signed the Nottingham Declaration on Climate Change, and ever since has been reducing its carbon footprint. It has been making a serious commitment to the quality of our environment in the county, and this Green Master Plan sets out the next stage of the journey to 2050 and zero carbon. Lincolnshire County Council has a leadership role in how we send the message to our other public sector colleagues and the private sector and people generally about how they can all play a part in reducing their carbon footprint, and how we can all contribute to the high quality environment in which we live and how we protect it for future generations. At the end of the day, we inherit our role in looking after the planet, but we only do so in terms of how we pass it on to the next generation. So we have a duty of care to our environment and our countryside and to our climate. And Lincolnshire County Council has, since 2011, played a great leadership role in this area. And this paper today is how we continue that journey. Before I hand over to David Hickman, I'll just ask my colleague, Councillor Poll, if he'd like to add any further comments.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. And just briefly to say that I think it's an excellent piece of work. We've been working on our climate position for many a year now, on carbon reduction. Getting feedback yet. So we've been working on carbon reduction for quite a few years now, and perhaps we haven't made a big enough thing of it to make people realise the importance and the depth of our work. But I'm really pleased that this has now come forward. As you quite rightly said, you know, we don't inherit the planet from our parents. We just we try and preserve it and make it better for our children to go on. It's a legacy that we need to leave, and our aim should be to leave it better than when we found it. So this is a step in that direction. Thank you.
So, David, if you could now take us through some of the key points. I think we've all read the paper, so some key themes would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colin. I think you and Councillor Poll have actually put it extremely well, so I don't really think I have an awful lot left to say. What I will say is that in keeping with the spirit of doing things differently, the Green Master Plan is designed as a web-based resource. It's not a traditional, very large and thick local government paper strategy. So the intention is that it will be accessible to the public, to our partner authorities, as well as to members and officers throughout the County Council at all times. Because it's a web-based resource, we also intend to make sure that we keep it updated regularly. So again, unlike a traditional paper document, we can keep it up to the mark and keep reviewing it and keep developing it as we go. I think executive members will be reasonably familiar with the three key principles which are forming the base of the master plan: minimise waste, take hold of the wider opportunities, and take responsibility and pride for our work in this area. And some of the key areas I think that we're really looking at to focus on to develop this agenda and to deliver against it, of course, include our continuing commitment to reduce our carbon emissions. So another significant reduction planned and in progress by 2023. But also some new areas of work. So, for example, our Smarter Working programme, which is looking at how we can take advantage and really reap the benefits of some of the ways we've changed our working patterns over the COVID period. So again, specifics within there would be permanent reductions in staff mileage, permanent reductions in impact, decarbonisation of transport across the county, and a number of other benefits. I think you'll have noticed in the papers that we are looking at really becoming a paperless organisation now. And again, it's a really great opportunity, I think, to take forward some of the benefits that are accruing from the new ways in which we're working. So I think we're using printers far less. We can turn that into a permanent situation. We're using an awful lot less paper because we're doing a lot more online, and we're travelling a lot less, doing a lot more meetings online as well. So I think those are all things that we can work to take forward in the future. One of the key things again about the Green Master Plan is this is not just about the work of one single team. This is about building a new approach right across services that the County Council delivers and delivering them in a different way for the future. So I think I will probably stop there if I may, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Ron Oxley, please, who's Vice Chairman of the Economy Scrutiny Committee, just to update us on the scrutiny comments, please.
Thank you very much, Martin, and good morning, everybody. Yeah, there's a lot of issues that came up. Obviously, one of them is plastics. As we all know, absolutely brilliant invention, but we're left with a legacy that could last hundreds of years when they slowly deteriorate in the sea or in the land or wherever. So there's pressure there on people that supply these plastics to probably deal with them at the end of their life. But another thing that I brought up at the meeting, and Councillor Poll actually commented on it during the scrutiny committee, was the fact that lorries may be the biggest problem on our planet, because a lot of them are only doing 5, 6, 7 miles to the gallon, and obviously to produce an electric lorry would be probably impractical. Obviously, there's other things, alternative fuels that need to be looked at, and I think this might take a lot more time than anticipated in the future. So that was a couple of items that were brought up, but generally, congratulated the team on the work they've done so far.
Thank you for that. So I think Councillor Poll wants to come back in.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. And it's really to respond to Ron's comments. I think the scrutiny committee was very interesting place to be. There was a lot of really detailed and informed discussion going on, and I think they looked at this in great depth. I think that the overall message that came out is there is no single answer to these problems. It's a whole range of answers that we're looking for, and some will come quickly, some will take longer to develop, and we mustn't sort of wed ourselves to one particular one, because technology changes at such a rate these days that better and more suitable alternatives come along very rapidly. And I think again, there's always this balance to strike between what we can do, what we should do, and what we need to do. And they're not all necessarily the same things, and they can't necessarily happen at the same time and at the same speed. So, superb piece of work, excellent progress in the right direction, and I'm really happy with this. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Are there anybody else who wishes to contribute, please? Okay, thank you for that. So yes, I mean, very much welcome and support this Green Master Plan. And as Councillor Davies said at the beginning, this is not something new for us. It's something we've been working very hard on for over 10 years now. So when we signed the Nottingham Declaration, we actually meant to deliver on it, which is why we've already reduced our carbon emissions as a council very significantly. And we've set ourselves a smaller but very challenging target, because we've taken the more easy ways forward, and this next 20% will be challenging, but we do believe it will be deliverable, so we can get to be carbon neutral by 2050 in a way also which gives people time to adjust and doesn't disrupt businesses in particular, so they can get themselves ready for the new regime when that happens. So there is just the one recommendation then, which is to approve. So I propose that we approve the Green Master Plan. Is there anybody dissenting from that? I think is the way we can handle that. If that's okay, Nigel?
Yes, that's fine, Leader.
Right. So is anybody dissenting from that to not approve the dissenting from approving the Green Master Plan?
Nothing indicated in the chat.
Okay, I'll take that as agreed then. Thank you very much. Good. We now move on to item 8, I believe, which is review of the Lincolnshire Minerals and Waste Local Plan. Councillor Pole, do you want to quickly introduce this? And then I think Adrian Winkler is going to just quickly go through it with us.
Yeah, thanks, Rita. No, there's not really much to add to the report here. It's a slight variation on what we've seen before, and I'm sure that the officers will whiz through this and not keep us hanging around long. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, it has been to us, and obviously it's been out to for a review. So obviously we're just particularly interested in any salient changes, please, Adrian. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, basically the report just highlights the findings of a provisional review of the Lincolnshire Minerals and Waste Local Plan, which is attached as Appendix A. We've considered quite a few factors in it, which are set out in pages 228 to 231. I mean, basically, the review has found that 11 policies need to be updated for a number of reasons, but primarily because a number of mineral waste applications are not being determined strictly in accordance with those policies. But setting that aside, whilst the other policies are generally performing well, the review has concluded that it would be preferable to review the whole plan, not least to make sure that all the policies remain consistent. I think under government regulations, the review must be completed by the 1st of June and a decision made over whether to update the plan. And that decision rests with the full county council. The report is therefore seeking from the executive an endorsement of the review document and a recommendation to the full council that the whole plan be updated in accordance with the timetable set out in Appendix B. The report was considered by the Environment and Economy Scrutiny Committee on the 12th of January. Which resolved to support the recommendations set out in the report. That committee also raised a number of issues which are set out in section 6 of the report on page 234. The updating of the plan would involve a number of stages, including an issues and options stage, a preferred option stage, and a publication stage. These will allow the scrutiny committee, the public and other stakeholders opportunities to make comments and influence the development of the emerging plan. That's basically all I've got to say, Leader.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Oxby, is there anything you want to add in terms of what was said at the Scrutiny Committee?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, it's just to emphasise policy W5 that we had concerns about this, that this policy meant that some decisions would be made by district councillors and or the county, and we thought that one decision ought to be made by one or the other, presumably the county council. Another thing that came to light was the draft Nottinghamshire Minerals Local Plan, which sort of, I think, skewed the figures. What it transpired to come out the woodwork was that certain operatives own sites within Lincolnshire and within Nottinghamshire, and that the Nottingham sites, in some cases, been mothballs. So this meant that minerals from Lincolnshire was being transported across the border, obviously skewing our figures, making our mineral and waste figures go up, while Nottingham's go down, giving the false impression for Nottingham that they didn't need to extract certain gravel, etc. So that was one thing that really came out, which was quite prevalent to the meeting. Other things about landfill sites, looking for those, but as Councillor Powell said, there's only 5,000 tonnes now that seem to go into landfill sites, but again, there might be an odd site that's needed to be sought. So that was about it, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So I'll open it up for questions, comments. Anybody wants to? As I say, it has been to us before, and there are some, I would suggest, minor amendments. Unless Councillor Paul has got anything he wants to add, we'll go to the vote, because I'm not seeing anybody indicating.
Nothing further, thanks, Chairman.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So the recommendations, there are two, as I think Adrian very ably summarised, which one is to endorse the review and two is to authorise the head of planning to make any further minor amendments as necessary. So I think we will have a vote on this. So all those who are not voting, please switch their cameras off and we'll take a vote. Okay, all those in favour, please show. Nigel, how are we doing?
That's unanimous, Leader.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Adrian, for that. Okay, we'll then move on to item 9 then, which is the Development Fund for Drainage Investigation and Flood Repairs. So I think I've got Matthew Harrison here, who is just going to talk us through the report. Thank you, Matthew.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and good morning, everybody. I shall take the report as read, if I may, and just pick up on some of the salient points in the report. As you'll see, there's been £2.2 million allocated to address drainage and flooding issues in Lincolnshire, and there's a programme of work being developed between the floods team and the highways team, and I will be overseeing that programme across these two service areas. So with regards to reporting on this fund, a governance document has been developed, which is Appendix A in the paper pack on page 391, and that sets out the reporting measures that we intend to take as the development fund progresses. A number of schemes have already been progressed as part of the development fund, totaling in the region of around £340,000. But as you will see from the attachment in Appendix B, on page 397, there is a spreadsheet of works there which will continue to be delivered to the end of the Development Fund programme in March 2022. I would just add that this work is in addition to an already full highways programme of drainage works, varying in degree of size and scale. So it is just worth pointing out that there will be a very full programme of work, and we just need to manage the expectations here around delivery, because there isn't actually any additional resource to deliver this. But we are confident with the work that we've done to date that we can deliver this full programme as best we can, some of which will no doubt be influenced by the investigation work that's undertaken to determine what can actually be delivered against some of these schemes. So, as I say, the work is ongoing. I think this is going to be very positive here for some communities across the county. As you will see from the programme, we have a very full delivery programme widespread across the county, which will deliver a range of schemes. I will stop there if I may, but more than happy to take any questions and elaborate further if needed. Thank you.
I'll let Councillor Oxby again. Oxby, come in again, please. You're earning your lunch today, Ron, aren't you? So, Ron, could you give us a summary of the scrutiny comments, please?
Yeah, that's fine, Chairman. Yeah, there's just one or two things that the committee wanted confirming, that there would be just one project team drawing the staff from highways and floods, the floods team, to deliver the programme of work. And secondly, they were very pleased that the programme of work was going to be commenced and these long-standing issues in the communities would be addressed. But finally, of course, the next thing was the fact that additional schemes hopefully would go forward, providing there's the necessary funding in the future. So that was about the three main items that were brought forward from the committee, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that. I think, again, I think a good example of partnership working, because what effectively we're doing here is we're investing, but also in partnership with the Environment Agency and drainage boards and others to actually enable a lot of these long-standing issues to be resolved. And as lead flood authority, we have to do that. But it is good to be able to resolve some of these issues, because when you're under threat of flooding or have been flooded, it is quite debilitating in terms of your confidence of the future. So I think it's something we are right to invest in, and also work in partnership with others. So I have Councillor Davey first then, please.
Thank you, Leader. As Matthew has pointed out, this is part of a much wider programme of works across the whole council and various departments in terms of flood investigations and repairs and maintenance. And I have to say that we're all aware of the challenges we've had over the last couple of years with water and flooding incidents. So this is a timely intervention. I think it's a good programme. I think it touches on a number of parts of the county and long-standing issues, which I'm sure some of the members of the executive will pick up. I'm clear that I think in the years ahead we may well have to look with the challenge of resources going forward about how we fund further works, because it's quite clear to me that flooding incidents will continue and probably get worse in the years ahead as climate change impacts on our county. So this is great news today. It will give resolution to some long-standing issues, and it's great to see a programme of works laid out in the way it is. And I sincerely hope that our Flood and Drainage Scrutiny Committee will monitor the delivery of these works going forward.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Bradwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is something that I get my ear bent about quite a lot, and it really is good news that we are putting some money in with partners to try and address the issues that have probably been very long-standing for communities. I think as well, though, and actually we aren't the planning authority for developments, but I do think there is something that we perhaps need to work with our district council colleagues, because a number of the issues that I have in some of my areas are down to new estates that's been put in. They haven't really connected with the old infrastructure that's there. And, this is causing huge issues. So, as I say, we aren't the housing authority for planning, but I do think there is, if we can influence a little, I think that would help, because we have issues, because lots of the drains are probably Victorian or something like that and have been added onto over the years. But I just think there are other issues about what's going on and what's coming down the line in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I've got Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Rita. Yes, just to sort of back up Councillor Bradwell on what she's saying. We've been trying for many years, as you know, to not only influence our district council colleagues, but also government to make up their minds about which they consider to be most important. It doesn't help when local authorities quite rightly refuse planning permissions in flood risk areas, only to have that decision overturned when they go to the inspectorate because of differences in government policies. So that's one item. And again, as she says, so much of our infrastructure was not designed for the amount of housing and the volumes of flows that, that we're now putting into them. And that's a real issue. I know that going forward, most people are trying to separate sewage, foul sewage from grey water, rainwater runoff and that sort of stuff. And that's what we should be doing. That's exactly the right thing to do. But we do need support from all government departments. We do need to make sure that we keep up our areas of influence where possible, and to try and achieve more sustainable, better developments going forward. To our elbows, and this is a great scheme. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that. Are there any more contributions, please, from anybody? I'm not seeing any. So yes, I mean, so there are the two recommendations there, and I think which I would hope we will support. I think some of the detail just needs to be sorted out in terms of how it's actually going to work in practice. But we are proposing to delegate to Executive Director Andy Gutherson to sort those out. I think in terms, just to explain, there will be a small officer and member panel which will review the investments in the future and where we need to do some alleviation in the future years. And at the same time, it's a partnership between the flood teams and the highways teams. But I think we should acknowledge that the highways teams will actually be mostly doing the physical work. So I'm sure that will be taken into account when the final organisation has been described in the appendices. So there are two recommendations, I believe. So they are to approve the development fund and then delegate to the Andy Gutherson the details of the governance, etc. So again, if we could have a vote on that, and everybody is not a voting member, please remove themselves, their video, switch their camera off, please. And so there's two recommendations there. All those in favour, please show. Nigel, how are we doing?
That's carried unanimously, Leader.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Matthew, for that.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Right, we move on to item 10 then, which is introducing a charging policy for pre-application planning advice. Councillor Pole, and then I'll ask the director just to explain what's going on here. Ready?
This will be very brief. Thank you, Leader. About time.
Yes, exactly. I think it's something which to do. I'll let Andy Gutherson just quickly run through the proposal, and I agree it is sensible and proportionate what's being proposed. Andy, please.
Councillor Hill, Neil McBride, the head of planning, is here to just quickly give you that introduction.
Thank you. Neil, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, just a quick introduction. There's not much really that I need to add to the report. Whilst there's no statutory obligation to provide advice to developers prior to making the plan application, government advice encourages that we do this. We have provided this advice free of charge for many years, and this paper seeks approval to set up a charging policy for this service, which is done by the majority of other planning authorities throughout the country. So I think that's all I need to say. I think the report probably speaks for itself. The Appendix A sets out the actual charging policy which we intend to take forward. If approved, we'll be looking at starting this from April 2021. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments there, please? As I said, it's pragmatic, and there are protections for small, particularly small thing. I've got Councillor Oxby again. I think you want to just come in, please. You're getting bored, Ron. There's something.
Yeah, there's a couple of items that the Scrutiny Committee brought to us. We discussed this back in October, so it was discussed again earlier this year, but has nothing changed. Everything stood. Yeah, they just said that basically we acknowledge that these proposed changes were in line with how other local authorities operated, and that this would be delegated to a chief officer to review the charging policy after a minimum of 12 months. Another thing that came up, it was clarified to the committee, it was stated that it was unlikely that there would be charges between county councils and district councils over this matter. And that was about it, Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, well, that's sensible. Yeah, I would suggest, yes. Okay, then. So thank you for that. So there are two recommendations there, which basically approve the charging regime and delegate again to the Executive Director to do the details. So again, we'll just have a vote on that, please. So all those not voting, please shut their camera down. All those in favour?
Carried unanimously, Leader.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Neil. Move then to the final paper, which is performance reporting against the Plan Performance Framework. So I'll go with James. Do you want to just come in and introduce this, please?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, so this is the performance report that just highlights our performance against plan, and Jasmine will just talk through a few highlights from that report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon, everybody. It's just turned 12 o'clock. So I'll just give you some highlights, really. So as James has said, this is Q2 performance against that corporate plan, and the corporate plan is published on our website. So full performance against that is also on the website. So that's the activities and the performance indicators against the corporate plan, and also service level performance. So we've introduced a new way of reporting, and that is visible on the website. So please do go and have a look if you want to look at the details of all of those performance indicators and activities, and we welcome any feedback. It generally does look quite neat and it's easy to navigate around. So I'd encourage everyone to do that. And obviously, if you've got any questions, do come back to me. So overall, in terms of the report, I've organised the report around the 4 ambitions in the corporate plan. And of those ambitions, all of them are on plan, with the exception of one, which is enable everyone to enjoy life to the full, and that's ahead of plan. So just to give you an overview, although the report focuses on the exceptions, but overall the activities, 89% of those that could be reported in Q2 are on plan or ahead of plan. And for the performance indicators of those that was relevant to compare with the target, 71% of those met or exceeded the target. I think it's worth just generally mentioning that in terms of the second national lockdown, Q2 performance doesn't generally reflect that second lockdown. So we'll expect to see the implications of that in Q3, which we'll be bringing to the executive on the 2nd of March. And it goes to overview and scrutiny on the 25th of February. So scrutiny had a discussion about the paper last week, and I'll hand it over to Councillor Parker, or back to yourself, Leader, for the scrutiny comments, and then happy to take any questions.
Councillor Parker, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we picked up a few points. Overall, 12 are on plan, as Jasmine said. 2 are behind plan. The first one related to what's called the Sherman Initiative, which is a fire and rescue service initiative that looks at particular ways of tackling reducing greater risk of fire. And Sherman actually stands for alliterative smoking, hoarding, elderly, reduced mental, alcohol, and needing carer support. So we looked at that. It was behind plan. Significant amount of preventive activity was still going on, but it was affected by COVID. And we also commented on the number of contacts where the customer considered that their concerns had been fully addressed through achieving early resolution. And we thought, well, what about the other 41%, which took longer to resolve? And officers confirmed that they would look into it. And it wasn't that they were dissatisfied, it was just that they were raising, that they were broadly satisfied. I think just one other point is that our ambition to create thriving environments, the milestones had been achieved. Further milestones for the 2 objectives. We thought it would be helpful to see future planned milestones in future reports to inform members about how we were actually achieving this objective of creating thriving environments. So we were looking at a few areas and asking for different forms of action to be taken. Overall, good report.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, contributions, please? Okay, I think yes, good. Overall good. Obviously, always some issues, but I think we can be assured that things are looking reasonably good in terms of performance. So I will then propose from the chair that the recommendation is that we consider and and note the report, including the comments from scrutiny. I propose that is we do that. Is there any dissent from that recommendation, please?
None showing, Chairman.
I'm not seeing any, so we'll take that as agreed. Thank you very much. So I think that then concludes the meeting. Thank you for your attendance, and thank you, Councillor Oxley in particular, for lots of contributions today. And I wish you all a good rest of the day and a successful month. Thank you.
Thanks, Leader.
Thank you.